Get off him! Leave the boy alone! Amara's shout sliced across the playground, sharp as breaking glass. She sprinted through the tangle of swings and monkey bars, braids snapping behind her, sneakers hammering the pavement. Ahead, Eli Hartwell lay twisted on the blacktop, palms scraped raw. His prosthetic leg had buckled sideways, the strap hanging loose. 3 boys in spotless uniforms circled him, laughter high and cruel. "Robot boy can't even keep up," one smirked, nudging the metal limb with a polished shoe. Amara planted herself between them and Eli, stance wide, chin raised. "Touch him again, and you'll regret it." Her tone was flat, dangerous, the kind that made even grown men blink. The tallest bully shifted, eyes darting. Zion Johnson stood a few yards back, slim phone steady in his hands, lens fixed. No words, only a cool stare, catching every shove, every sneer, the way Eli's shoulders folded in shame. Eli pushed against the ground, wincing. "I'm fine." Amara crouched, helping him balance. "You're bleeding." A quick glance at the angry scrape along his palm. "That leg looks ready to snap." He shook his head, voice low. "I'm not supposed to bother people." "Bother people?" Amara's brows knit. "You deserve to stand without getting kicked around." She tightened the strap on the prosthetic in one swift motion, then angled her body as a shield. A shadow spilled over the hopscotch squares. Tires hissed to a stop. A black SUV gleamed at the curb, tinted glass rolling down. Vivien Cross leaned out, immaculate coat draped over her shoulders, smile sharp enough to cut. "Eli, sweetheart," velvet voice sliding across the asphalt. "Time to come along." The bullies melted away, suddenly polite. Vivien stepped out, heels clicking, each step measured, too smooth for a school pickup. Her gaze swept over Amara, paused on Zion's phone. Eli froze mid-breath. Vivien's fingers closed around his wrist, not unkind on the surface, but firm. A quiet clamp disguised as affection. "We don't keep Dr. Vale waiting." Amara straightened, refusing to give ground. He was getting stomped on. "That doctor can wait." Vivien's smile widened without warmth. Such loyalty. Her eyes flicked from Amara to Zion. Not every story needs an audience. Zion didn't lower the phone. The faint red light kept blinking, steady as his stare. Vivien opened the SUV door with a soft click, guiding Eli inside. For a split second, Amara caught a flash inside the console. A small amber bottle, label half peeled, liquid sloshing as Vivien slipped it into her handbag with practiced ease. The vehicle glided away, leaving a faint scent of leather and something chemical. Amara's fists curled at her sides. Zion's voice finally surfaced, calm as stone. "That wasn't just a ride home." A cool wind tugged at the edges of the playground, scattering chalk dust across the hopscotch line. The laughter from moments ago had drained into silence. Something bigger than a scuffle had just brushed past them, and Amara felt it settle in her chest like a warning. Whatever lived behind that polished smile wasn't finished with Eli. And now it had seen them too. Zion stayed at the edge of the playground, body still, phone warm in his hand. The SUV had slipped into traffic, black glass swallowing everything inside, but the image burned behind his eyes. Vivien's fingers sliding a small amber bottle into her bag, label half peeled, liquid catching the light. Amara paced a line across the hopscotch grid, sneakers scraping paint. "That wasn't a snack pack," breath clipped, low. She hid something. Zion replayed the moment, thumb hovering over the pause icon. The bottle hadn't looked like cough syrup, more like a prescription nobody was supposed to see. Around them the playground emptied, parents calling, doors slamming, kids dragging backpacks through dry leaves. A teacher glanced over, hesitated, then steered a child away. Silence filled the gap where laughter had been. Amara crouched, snatching a crumpled worksheet fluttering against the curb, scanning for any clue. Nothing but chalk dust and an oily tread from Vivien's tires. She straightened, jaw sharp. "Grandma says you watch hands." "Hands don't lie." Zion's eyes narrowed, tracking the route the SUV had taken. A hospital shuttle hummed past, Hartwell Rehabilitation stamped along its side, heading the same way. "That's no coincidence," Amara muttered, scanning the street. Eli's limp isn't an accident. Zion slid the phone into his pocket, gaze fixed on the far corner where the avenue widened toward the medical district. A breeze pushed through, carrying the faint pulse of Marvin Gaye from a shop radio. The tune, old, steady, pressed against a day that had just turned dangerous. "People like her," Amara continued, voice gaining grit. "They don't stop with a playground scare." They tightened the leash. Zion's fingers drummed against his thigh, an unspoken countdown. "We follow," Amara decided, breath sharp. Not reckless, just close enough to see where she runs. Zion looked at her, expression flat except for a glint of steel. Amara's eyes softened for a heartbeat, then hardened again. Eli's stuck with her. Nobody else is stepping in. Zion's phone screen flicked alive, camera ready. He adjusted the strap of his backpack, scanning alleys, rooftops, every angle Vivien might watch from. Leaves scraped across the pavement, carried by a gust that smelled of fried catfish and hair grease from the barbershop up the block, familiar scents from their side of town, a reminder of people who learned to read trouble before it shouted. Amara lifted her chin toward the avenue. If we leave him now, she wins. Zion pressed the record button once, a silent pledge etched in pixels. Across the playground, the sun slipped lower, spilling orange over the swings. The space felt hollow without Eli, a stage suddenly missing its lead. Amara stepped toward the exit gate, each stride firm, breath steady despite the pulse hammering in her ears. Zion moved with her, shadows stretching long and thin behind them. Whatever hid inside that bottle, whatever business tied Vivien's polished smile to the hospital shuttle, had just pulled them across a line. No turning back now. Amara pushed the gate wide, a quick glance over her shoulder to scan the street where the SUV had turned. "Move. My block's safer than standing here waiting for her to circle back." Eli hovered near the curb, shoulders drawn tight, eyes flicking toward the avenue as if expecting headlights to reappear. His fingers fumbled with the strap on his prosthetic, the buckle clicking against metal. Zion stepped off the sidewalk first, phone angled low, but recording every step. The lens swept across parked cars, alleys, rooftops, hunting for signs they weren't alone. They cut through side streets where brick stoops pressed close, murals rising from cracked walls, black leaders with crowns of gold, fists raised against fading paint. A sax riff bled from a window, sliding over the smell of frying catfish and sweet cornbread drifting from a corner kitchen. An old man nodded from a crate, tapping rhythm against a knee. His gaze lingered on Eli's limp, then shifted back to the twins with a warning tucked behind kindness. Amara shortened her stride, waiting for Eli to catch up. Almost there. The words came clipped, scanning for shadows. Eli braced against a railing, face pale. "The leg keeps rubbing raw." He flexed the brace a fraction. "She says pain means I'm learning strength." Amara stopped mid-step, anger flashing. "Strength doesn't come from somebody locking screws wrong." Zion tracked the tremor in Eli's knee, storing the image with the same precision he used on Vivien's bottle. A low rumble passed at the far end of the street, a dark sedan slowing before accelerating away. Amara's eyes followed it until it vanished behind row houses. They climbed a narrow stairwell, walls lined with framed choir photos and faded protest flyers. Gospel spilled from a speaker somewhere above, voices layered over a steady drumbeat. The air smelled of starch, collard greens, and something sweet baking slow. At the landing, a door cracked open. Loretta Brooks filled the frame, apron dusted with flour, gaze sharp beneath a wrap of blue cloth. One look at Eli's uneven stance tightened the corners of her mouth. "Inside." Her voice deep, not a suggestion. Warm light spilled across the kitchen, cast iron skillets cooling on the stove, a tray of cornbread steaming gold. But the glow couldn't erase the pulse of tension clinging to Eli's shoulders. He lowered himself into a chair, careful with the brace. Amara slid a plate forward, movements precise, almost guarding him. "This is where people watch out," she said, steady as a verdict. "Not where they let you stay hurt." Eli stared at the bread, breath shallow. Zion stayed near the doorway, back to the wall, eyes sweeping corners before landing on the metal joint at Eli's knee. Every squeak of the hinge, every flinch, logged and stored. The kitchen felt like refuge, but the quiet carried weight. Proof that whatever held Eli in pain might already be stretching its reach toward this room. Vivien's SUV glided to a stop at the mouth of the block, sunlight glinting off black paint like a blade. She stepped out, heels sharp on cracked asphalt, a wicker basket looped over one arm. Cellophane crinkled around loaves, jars, and a bow the shade of quiet power. Porch doors cracked open. Conversations paused mid-sentence. From a window above the barber shop, a gospel harmony floated down and faltered as eyes followed the woman striding between brick stoops. Vivien's smile unfurled slow, velvet stretched thin. She held the basket forward, letting the contents catch the light. Artisan bread, imported jam, cards embossed with her initials. "Thought I'd leave a little warmth for this lovely street." The words laced with honey, but her gaze measured doorways, curtains, the corners where kids liked to watch unseen. A broom scraped along the curb. The man holding it, salt hair under a fedora, kept sweeping but never looked away. Vivien drifted toward a cluster of women folding laundry on a stoop. "I hear someone here keeps a generous eye on neighborhood children." A caretaker of sorts. Her glance slid past their faces to the window, 2 houses down where lace curtains hid Loretta Brooks' kitchen. One woman shifted, folding the sheet tighter. Vivien leaned closer, voice dropping under the hum of traffic. "He's a fragile boy. I need to be certain the influence around him is appropriate." Across the street, Zion crouched behind an ajar door, sleeve draped over a glowing phone. The record light blinked, steady as his heartbeat. Vivien's steps carried her toward a pair of teens perched on the barbershop rail, a plate of hot wings between them. She placed the basket on the hood of her car, fingers resting on the lid like a claim. "There's a boy and girl, twins, spending time with him at school. You wouldn't happen to know if they're encouraging him to forget where he belongs." One teen lowered his eyes to the food, shoulders taut. Vivien's nails tapped the wicker handle, rhythm precise. "I need to know who keeps meddling." The sentence landed soft but heavy, slicing the afternoon quiet. Inside the house, Amara pressed against the wall beside Zion, breath caught. "She's not just dropping off bread," a whisper edged with steel. From the stoop, the man with the broom stepped forward, 2 claps ringing against brick. "Ma'am, folks here guard their own. Gifts don't buy answers." His eyes held steady, a silent warning laced with history. Vivien's smile curved higher, but tension flickered at its edges. She retrieved a jar from the basket, held it out like an olive branch no one wanted. Just trying to keep harmony. Her gaze skimmed the row again, pausing a beat on the curtain hiding Zion's phone. For a heartbeat, the street held its breath. Vivien closed the basket lid with a snap, turned on a heel, and slid behind the wheel. The engine rumbled low, tailpipe stirring grit across the sidewalk. She rolled forward slow, eyes scanning mirrors as if imprinting every doorway. The car disappeared at the corner, leaving the basket on a stoop, ribbons trembling in the breeze, a bright lure pinned to a dark warning. Zion stopped the recording, tucking the phone deep in his hoodie. Around them, conversation and broom strokes returned. Softer, cautious. The gospel tune climbed again from the upstairs window, steady but quieter, as if the block understood a line had just been drawn across its bricks. Loretta Brooks swung the door wider, a halo of flour rising from her apron. Afternoon sun cut across her face, lines etched deep from years of standing firm. "Bring him in." Amara eased Eli past the threshold. Heat from the oven wrapped the room, collards and sweet cornbread clinging to the air. Zion slipped in behind, curtain drawn quick, scanning the street before letting fabric settle. Loretta's gaze fixed on Eli's stance, the way his weight leaned from the brace. She crouched, fingers moving with a healer's memory, tracing the hinge of the prosthetic. A faint squeal answered when she twisted a screw. Her eyes sharpened. "This bolt's backwards." She brushed fabric aside, revealing skin rubbed raw beneath the strap. "Pain like this isn't an accident." Eli flinched, eyes darting to the floor. Dr. Vale adjusted it. Vivien watched Loretta Rose, apron shifting with the motion, jaw tight. "Vale!" The name snapped through the room. She crossed to a drawer, pulled out a slim folder wrapped in brown paper, edges worn from years of hiding. Amara stepped closer, pulse in her throat. "Grandma, what's inside?" Loretta spread the contents across the table. Copies of invoices, photos of braces, notes scrawled in a steady hand. "St. Matthew's Hospital," she began, voice clipped, each phrase landing like a gavel. "I ran recovery there. Kids learning to walk again, fighting for balance." Vale arrived with contracts and smiles. Suddenly, braces doubled in price, surgeries tripled, parents buried in bills. She tapped a photo. A leg brace nearly identical to Eli's, a red circle marking the same screw. He called it specialized care. I called it fraud. Her fingers tightened on the paper. I reported it. Next week, my badge stopped opening doors. Security walked me out with a box of snapshots. A bitter pause. Vale stayed, richer than the ward's budget. Eli studied the picture, voice a thread. "Mine looks the same." Loretta leaned close, eyes locking on his. "They twist hardware so it grinds against bone. Pain keeps you compliant. Parents think therapy's failing, so they sign up for more sessions. Insurance covers the rest." Amara's fists balled at her sides. "Vivien's part of it. That basket wasn't kindness. It was a warning." Loretta snapped the folder shut, slid it back halfway, but kept a palm on top. "Vivien shields him. Money ties them together. Vale builds, she delivers the kids." Zion snapped a silent photo of the documents, light from the phone screen glancing off Loretta's eyes. She placed a steady hand on Eli's shoulder. "They're not fixing you. They're milking you. And anyone who tries to speak gets silenced." Her gaze drifted to the window, tension settling in her spine. A car horn cracked the air outside, 2 short bursts. The room froze. Loretta crossed to the curtain, peeled it back an inch. A dark sedan idled at the corner, glass opaque. A pulse of exhaust curled against the curb. She let the fabric fall, turned back slow. They don't knock. They hover, her voice low, anchored with warning. Amara stepped nearer to Eli, stance protective. "We don't let them near him again." Zion checked the phone. Files saved, screen dimmed. Loretta slid the bolt across the door with a firm snap, then set plates on the table, cornbread steaming between them. "Eat," her tone even, but every syllable lined with steel. "Strength isn't in the pain they give you. It's in proof, and people willing to drag it into daylight." Steam curled upward, sweet against the room's chill. Outside, the sedan's engine faded, but the echo stayed, folded into flower dust and collard scent, a quiet promise that danger already knew this address. Marcus Hartwell strode through the executive floor, phone pressed to his ear, rain sliding down the skyline beyond the glass. A quarterly report folder rested under his arm, but Eli's voice on the line bent every hallway toward a single point. "It hurts all the time," the boy's whisper cracked. "Every step. She says I have to push through Marcus, cut across polished marble, shoes echoing. Where is it hurting?" "The brace." Feels like nails, a muffled sound. Amara's voice somewhere close, urging him to stay calm. Marcus reached his office, door swinging shut behind him. He dropped the folder, flipped open his laptop, and keyed into the investment dashboard. Numbers poured across the screen, clean and merciless. A search bar waited, fingers hit the keys. Vale OrthoCare. Rows of data filled the monitor. Contracts, invoices, purchase orders routed through a subsidiary stamped with Hartwell Industries' crest. Eli's name pulsed behind Marcus's eyes, while Vale's signature scrolled down a column of payments. The intercom blinked. A young analyst hovered in the doorway, hesitant. "Sir, finance left a memo. Expansion proposal for the rehab portfolio." "Put it there." Marcus gestured without, looking. The memo landed on the desk. A single page flagged red. At the top, Authorization. Dr. Adrian Vale. A thunderclap rolled beyond the windows, rattling the pane. Marcus scanned the ledger again, pulse climbing. Funds moved from Hartwell accounts straight into a shell corporation, then out to Vale's clinics. Dates matched the months Eli's appointments multiplied. Another message vibrated on the desk, Zion's recording forwarded by Amara. A sliver of Vivien's voice, low and precise. I need to know who keeps meddling. Marcus froze, eyes flicking between the memo, the ledger, and the phone screen glowing with Vivien's words. He yanked the desk drawer open, pulling a legal pad, scribbling names. Vale, Vivien, Hartwell Medical Holdings, lines connecting in a jagged map. The analyst lingered near the door. Everything all right, Mr. Hartwell? Marcus tore the memo in half, hands steady despite the storm inside. Close that door. The latch clicked, sealing the office. Rain bled down the glass like ink. He gathered the shredded memo, set it aside, then snapped photos of the ledger with his personal phone, angles quick, precise. Each shot caught another link, board approvals bearing his own initials, contracts funneling millions into the network, torturing his child. Lightning carved the skyline. In its flash, Marcus caught his reflection, power suit, clenched jaw, eyes dark with something heavier than profit. He turned back to the monitor, scrolled to the oldest entry. 3 years ago, the same quarter Vivien convinced him to invest in innovative pediatric care. A breath slid out slow, deliberate. No more shadows. He closed the ledger, copied files to a secure drive, slid it into his jacket. The storm outside pressed against the windows, a low drum that matched the new rhythm of his heartbeat. Eli's pain wasn't an accident of medicine. It was a byproduct of Marcus's own empire, and the people behind it weren't strangers. They were on his payroll. He palmed the drive, eyes fixed on the elevator at the end of the hall. Somewhere below, a child limped, because men in polished offices chose margins over bones. The next move wouldn't come from a boardroom. It would come from him. Marcus guided Eli through the sliding doors of a small clinic tucked behind a jazz cafe, a place that smelled faintly of antiseptic and roasted beans from next door. The sign above the counter read, Dr. Lena Samuels, orthopedic specialist, the letters worn but steady. Inside, sunlight spilled across polished tile, catching on framed photos. Dr. Samuels standing beside local church choirs, little league teams, a wall of kids she'd helped run again. Her voice cut across the waiting room, calm yet sharp enough to slice through Marcus's nerves. Bring him straight back. Eli limped beside his father, brace squeaking. Sweat slicked his forehead, though the room stayed cool. Samuels held the door to an exam room, motioning him onto a table padded in deep blue vinyl. She crouched, hands quick and sure, examining the prosthetic. Fingers probed the joint, turned the lock, twisted a small bolt. A metallic rasp split the quiet. Samuel's brow arched. This screw isn't just loose. It's reversed, forcing the hinge against bone. Marcus stiffened, grip tightening on Eli's shoulder. Someone installed it like that? Samuels adjusted the leg, letting it dangle free. The angle was wrong by design. No accident. Whoever touched this brace meant to keep him in pain. Eli's lip trembled. Amara's earlier warnings flashed across Marcus's thoughts like sirens. Samuels opened a cabinet, withdrew a sterile kit. We'll run blood work. She swabbed Eli's arm, slid a needle in, drew crimson into a vial. Moments later, she set the sample into a compact analyzer. A low hum filled the space, steady as a heartbeat. Eli sat small against the paper sheet, eyes fixed on a poster of track runners taped to the wall. The machine beeped. Samuels leaned close, reading numbers scrolling across a narrow screen. Her face hardened. Sedatives? Strong ones? Not a prescription for therapy. These levels would fog an adult. Marcus blinked hard. Sedatives? He's 9. Tranquilizers disguised as supplements. Samuels held up the printout, lines of data cutting through white paper. Somebody's dosing him to keep him quiet. Eli's hands curled in his lap. She gives me drops after sessions. Voice barely there. Says it's vitamins, so my leg won't swell. Marcus crouched to eye level, jaw tight. No more drops. Ever Samuels placed a palm on the table, steady but firm. We'll document everything. Photos, lab results, brace specs. You'll need this if you want them stopped. Marcus nodded once, the weight in his chest shifting from shock to resolve. Can you repair it? I can adjust it now, Samuels replied, fingers already working the hinge. Long term, we replace the joint completely. But first, you protect this boy from whoever's treating him like a revenue stream. She finished recalibrating, soft click locking the brace in its proper position. Eli tested his foot on the floor. Relief flickered across his face, cautious, as though expecting pain to return. Samuels packed the documents into a slim envelope, sealed it with a strip of tape. Guard this like cash. Her gaze lingered on Marcus. People who twist hardware and drug children don't back down easy. Marcus slid the envelope inside his jacket, fingers brushing the hidden drive from his office. 2 sets of evidence now burned against his ribs. Outside, rain swept against the window, neon reflections jittering over Eli's small frame. Samuels touched the boy's shoulder. You're not broken, son. They just tried to bend you. Eli managed a faint nod. Marcus straightened, scanning the room as if danger could seep through the walls. We're done. Letting them near him, Samuels unlocked the side door, leading them to a discreet exit. The alley smelled of wet pavement and coffee grounds, a siren wailing somewhere deep in the city. Marcus tightened his grip on Eli's hand, the envelope heavy under his coat. The network hurting his son had a face now, and it was stitched to contracts bearing his own crest. The fight had shifted from whispers in a kitchen to a war mapped in signatures and bloodwork, and Marcus was walking out ready to strike. Dr. Samuels slid the lab printout across the counter, the paper whispering against metal. The narrow room behind the exam bay smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic, rain still ticking against the glass. Marcus, Amara, and Zion crowded close. Eli perched on the padded table, fingers twisting the edge of the sheet. Samuels tapped the columns of numbers. That's not a vitamin trace. It's a sedative, strong enough to dull motor response. Her gaze cut toward the recalibrated brace leaning against the wall. And that screw wasn't an accident either. Someone wants this boy dependent. Marcus's jaw set hard. For what purpose? Money. Samuels flipped to a second page, invoices highlighted in yellow. Vale's clinics submit claims for chronic rehabilitation. Pain guarantees repeat sessions. Sedation keeps the child compliant, so no one questions why treatment never ends. Amara's breath hitched, eyes wide. Zion lifted his phone, red light blinking steady, lens fixed on every paper Samuels laid out. She spread the documents wider, a chart mapping patients over 3 years, everyone with identical hardware adjustments, same dosage notations. At the edge of each form, a signature looped, Vivien Cross, listed as patient advocate. Advocate? Marcus leaned closer. Samuels nodded once. She funnels children from wealthy households. Vale handles the medical fraud. She handles access. They file for premium insurance, pad therapy hours, bill for replacements the kids don't need. Every limp, every complaint, turns into a new line item. Amara pressed closer to Eli, voice sharp despite its softness. They're hurting him so they can bill? Samuel slid a photo from a manila envelope, a hospital storeroom stacked with unopened braces, tags bearing Hartwell's investment logo. These units were never meant for use, only for invoices. Your family name is stamped on half the orders. Marcus's hands curled against the counter, knuckles blanching. Samuels placed another sheet atop the pile, a payout ledger listing Vale's clinic next to an offshore account marked VC Holdings. Cross and Vale split reimbursements. He writes the prescriptions. She ensures the patients keep coming back. Zion zoomed in, recording the signatures, the figures. Do they target only rich families? Marcus's voice was a low grind. They target anyone with coverage fat enough to bleed, Samuels replied. But kids tied to big accounts are easiest to isolate. Parents assume high-dollar therapy must be working. Eli stared at the floor, toes barely touching tile. Amara wrapped an arm around him, steady but taut. We stop them, she murmured, fire edging the words. Samuels gathered the papers into a clean stack. Stopping them means exposure. Board filings, press, maybe law enforcement. People like this thrive because no one drags receipts into daylight. She paused, eyes scanning the room. If you move fast and loud. Otherwise, they'll bury the evidence before you get a warrant. Lightning flashed, throwing shadows across the file. Zion's phone caught the reflection, the red record light slicing through the dark. Marcus glanced at his son, then the stack. They used my name to bankroll this? Samuels didn't flinch. Without those funds, Vale couldn't build half these centers. She tapped one last form, Vivien's cursive sweeping under a column labeled Guardian Authorization. Rain hammered harder on the window, a drumbeat behind the silence. Amara's stare held the page, then shifted to Marcus. She walks into neighborhoods with baskets and leaves kids hooked to machines. That's not business, it's hunting. Zion lowered the phone just enough to whisper, "We've got proof now." Marcus looked between them. His child, the twins who had risked their block to shield him, the doctor who'd opened the rot. The stakes pressed down, heavy as the skyline outside. Samuel sealed the files in a plastic sleeve, sliding it toward Marcus. "Keep this close. Tonight, someone in that network will realize the brace is fixed and the drugs won't work. They'll come looking." Marcus tucked the packet inside his jacket, eyes hard. The room felt too small for the storm tightening around them. Eli shifted, testing the corrected brace, a flicker of strength in his stance. Amara squeezed his shoulder, silent promise etched in her grip. Zion steadied the phone, capturing one last shot of the evidence before locking it. Outside, the city lights blinked through rain like signals on a battlefield. The scheme wasn't rumor now. It had coordinates, names, numbers, a paper trail that screamed theft and cruelty. The door to the alley swung shut behind them as they stepped into wet air, files clutched tight. The fight ahead was no longer about whispers or suspicion. It was about dragging a crime ring into daylight before it swallowed another child whole. Knocks slammed against Loretta Brooks's front door, hard enough to rattle the picture frames on the hallway wall. Amara froze mid-step, a plate still in her hand from clearing lunch. Zion lowered his camera, eyes narrowing toward the noise. Loretta wiped her palms on her apron and slid the bolt back. Two strangers stood on the porch, one in a navy blazer with a badge clipped to her belt, another holding a thin envelope marked County Child Protective Services. Behind them, a dark sedan idled at the curb, engine running. The woman at the front scanned the room with brisk precision. "We're here on a welfare concern about a minor staying in this home." Eli shrank closer to Marcus, who had just stepped from the hallway carrying Samuels's envelope. Loretta planted herself between the visitors and the boy. "This child is safe under my roof." A second envelope emerged from the agent's briefcase. "We have to inspect living conditions, and you'll need to read this. Petition regarding temporary placement." Zion's phone angled discreetly, red light pulsing. Marcus opened the envelope. Legal language spilled across the page, citing anonymous reports of improper supervision and medical neglect. Amara's fists clenched at her sides. Anonymous? Or bought? From the sidewalk, another figure approached. Mr. Delroy, the landlord, face pale against the drizzle. He held a folded notice. "Rent increase, effective immediately," his voice low, eyes flicking to the sedan. 30 days to vacate if the adjustment can't be met. Loretta's chin lifted. "You've never raised rent in 10 years. Delroy glanced toward the car, then back to the paper, guilt heavy in his stance. Amara stepped forward, voice cutting through the tension. "Vivien's pulling strings. She wants us out so nobody protects Eli." The CPS agent's tone sharpened. "Ma'am, accusations won't help." "We need to see where the child sleeps." Loretta blocked the hallway. "You're not crossing this line without proper court order." Marcus shifted, unfolding another document from his pocket, the copy of Vale's ledger Samuels had given him. "Before anyone moves another inch, look at these records. There's a reason this visit lands the same day we uncovered fraud." The agent hesitated, eyes flicking to the sedan. Zion zoomed in on the car's windshield. A silhouette moved inside, phone pressed to an ear. Vivien's outline, unmistakable even through rain-slick glass. Amara's voice dropped to a blade-thin whisper. She's outside watching her own trap. Marcus met the agent's stare. If you let her manipulate your badge, you're part of it. Check the paperwork before you threaten a grandmother. The younger officer behind the agent shifted uneasily, reading a line in the petition. Source of complaint: Cross Foundation for Pediatric Wellness. Loretta's laugh was short, bitter. That's her shell charity. The sedan's engine revved, then settled back to idle, like a predator waiting. The lead agent closed the folder halfway. We'll review these allegations at headquarters. Her gaze swept the living room, landing on Eli's bandaged leg. Something in her face flickered, unsure. For now, keep him here. We'll contact you if further action's required. She turned, signaling to the driver. The sedan pulled from the curb, taillights bleeding red, through the drizzle. Delroy lingered, notice trembling in his hand. Loretta took it calmly, eyes steady. Tell her I don't scare easy. He nodded once, retreating toward the street. Inside, the room stayed taut with silence. Eli clung to Amara's sleeve. Zion replayed the footage, the faint image of Vivien framed behind tinted glass. Marcus closed the door, slid the lock home. She's trying to starve us out. Take the house, smear Loretta, cage Eli. Loretta set the rent notice on the table beside Samuels's reports, lips firm. Then we hold ground. Every paper, every face today goes into our file. Rain beat harder against the windows, but the resolve in the room settled heavier than the storm. Vivien's reach had just declared itself, and none of them were backing away. Fluorescent lights buzzed over the empty hallway, their glare sliding across polished linoleum. Amara pressed her back to the wall, listening for footsteps beyond the bend. Zion crouched at a keypad beside a frosted glass door, stamped Dr. Adrian Vale, Orthopedic Research. His fingers moved quick, coaxing the lock with a code they'd lifted from a maintenance badge in the lobby. A soft click. The twins slipped inside. The office smelled of sterilizer and paper dust, cold air humming from a vent above. Filing cabinets lined one wall, drawers labeled with patient codes. A framed photo showed Vale shaking hands with Vivien Cross, a plaque beneath congratulating their partnership in pediatric advancement. Amara scanned the room, whispering sharp. 2 minutes. Grab what we can. Zion powered up the computer, screen flashing hospital blue. He slid a flash drive into the port, copying directories, insurance claims, patient rosters, invoices linking Hartwell's funds to Vale's clinic. Each folder bled numbers and signatures. From the hall came the grind of rubber soles. Amara darted behind a cabinet, heart hammering. A guard's shadow stretched under the door, keys jangling. Zion's hands flew faster. A security alert flared on the monitor. Unauthorized access detected. The handle rattled. A voice muttered outside, radio static snapping. Amara shot Zion a look. He unplugged the drive, yanked his phone free, thumb hovering. "Sending now," he mouthed. One tap launched the files to Marcus's encrypted inbox. The lock turned halfway. Zion yanked the cord from the tower, wiped the screen dark, and ducked behind the desk just as the door cracked open. A beam of light swept across the room. "Everything looks fine," the guard's partner called from the corridor. "Probably a glitch." The first guard scanned the office, gaze lingering on the computer. His fingers tightened on the doorframe, then slowly released. The door clicked shut, footsteps fading down the hall. Amara exhaled, steadying herself against the cabinet. "We're not clear yet," she breathed. Zion crawled out, sliding the flash drive into his shoe. "Backup's in Marcus's inbox. If they wipe this system, we still have proof." They moved toward a metal drawer marked Patient Prosthetics, Archive. Inside lay folders stamped with insurance seals and initials. E.H., M.J., dozens more. Photos showed braces identical to Eli's, screws circled in red ink. Attached invoices listed special modifications at triple market rate. Amara snapped shots with her phone, hand steady despite adrenaline. "They're running an assembly line of pain," From deeper in the corridor came a new sound. Elevator doors sliding open, voices approaching. Zion stuffed the folder back, wiped prints from the drawer. Time's up. They darted to the side exit Vale used for staff meetings, slipping into a service hallway lined with supply carts. The clatter of carts masked their steps as they cut through laundry bins, heading toward the rear loading bay. A guard rounded the corner just as they reached the door. Amara swung it open, blinding light spilling from the parking lot. Zion pushed her through, catching the door with his foot long enough to glance back. Vale himself stood at the far end of the hall, speaking into a phone, expression unreadable behind glass walls. His gaze lifted for an instant, sweeping the corridor. Zion let the door swing shut, locking that look behind steel. Outside, rain speckled the asphalt, sirens wailing somewhere over the city. Amara pulled her hood low, clutching the evidence-laced phone. Zion checked his inbox, confirmation from Marcus. Got it. Stay hidden. The twins sprinted toward the alley, shoes slapping puddles, adrenaline still spiking. They had just cracked open the hive, and every sting inside was aimed their way. Marcus pushed through the revolving doors of Hartwell Tower, rain clinging to his collar. The twins' files burned against his ribs inside the leather case. Upstairs, the executive floor hummed, phones ringing, assistants moving fast. A calendar alert on his screen flashed red. Board review, 8 a.m., Vale Rehab Expansion. He dropped the case on the desk and snapped it open. Photos from Zion's raid spilled out. Invoices stamped with Hartwell logos, braces tagged with serial numbers, Vivien's signature under Guardian Authorization. His office line buzzed. A paralegal's voice rushed through. Sir, finance needs your sign-off tonight so funds clear before morning. Marcus scanned the memo attached to the email. Vale's name sat bold under Primary Contractor. At the bottom, Vivien's note in elegant script. Approval keeps everyone comfortable. Another ping, an encrypted text from an unknown number. Close the deal. Keep the boy safe. He stood, tension coiled. Across the room, the skyline blinked through rain like a jury waiting. He grabbed the phone, called Samuels on speaker. Got the evidence? It's secure, she answered. But they'll move if they sense you hesitating. Don't let them close that funding knock hit. The door. His aide stepped in, clutching a folder. Mr. Hartwell, compliance flagged these payments. Looks like a funnel from Hartwell Medical to Orthovale. Marcus took the folder, flipped pages fast. Every line tied Eli's suffering to an account bearing his own initials. He turned back to the aide. Clear my morning. No meeting with Vale, no release of funds. Lock every transfer until I review. Yes, sir. The aide backed out, door shutting tight. Marcus returned to the desk, eyes moving over the evidence. Zion's screenshots, Samuels's lab report, ledgers marked confidential. Each paper weighed more than the empire they threatened. He pulled a burner phone from the drawer, keyed in a number etched on a sticky note. An investigative journalist owing him a favor. Meet me tonight. Bring a secure recorder. On the window glass, his reflection hovered. CEO suit draped over a father ready to break ranks. He slipped the files back into the case, snapped it shut, and slung it over his shoulder. As he left the office, the storm outside cracked against the tower. For the first time, Marcus didn't brace to protect a brand. He braced to hit back at the people bleeding his son through his own accounts. Loretta Brooks stood at the center of her living room, apron still on, stormlight spilling through lace curtains. Marcus filled the doorway, leather case in hand, files pressing against his side like a loaded weapon. Eli sat curled on the sofa, brace gleaming under the lamp, Amara beside him, Zion guarding the edge of the window with his phone ready. Loretta crossed the floor, planted herself between Marcus and the boy. You walked in here carrying evidence heavier than bricks. Her voice cut through the rain. But proof means nothing if you don't choose what side you're on. Marcus lowered the case onto the table. Papers slid free. Ledger pages, photos from Vale's office, Samuels's lab report. The pile caught the lamp's glow like sparks. Loretta snapped her fingers toward it. That's a map of people who see our babies as paydays. You can't keep one foot in their circle and one with us. Marcus stared at the evidence, jaw tight. If I move wrong, they'll bury this. They'll drag my company through fire. They already burned a child, Loretta cut in, eyes sharp. You think your brand hurts worse than screws cutting into Eli's skin? Than sedatives choking him quiet? Eli shifted, gaze sliding up from the cushions. I don't want anyone else hurt because of me. Loretta crouched, hand steady on his shoulder. You didn't do this. They did. And grown folk fix what predators break. She rose, turned back to Marcus. Hartwell money built that network. Hartwell strength can tear it down. Rain lashed harder outside, a percussion behind her words. She pointed at the case. Don't let dollars blind you to blood on those contracts. Amara stepped closer, voice crisp. She's right. We saw the hive. They'll sting anyone who stands in the way, but they're scared of daylight. Zion lifted his phone, screen glowing with Vivien's text still saved. Close the deal. Keep the boy safe. Loretta's gaze fixed on Marcus, steady as a verdict. That woman thinks she owns this block, this child, even you. You gonna let her write the ending? Marcus felt every eye on him, the twins waiting, Eli trembling under a blanket, Loretta unflinching. He reached into the case, pulled free the ledger stamped with Hartwell's crest. Loretta stepped in close, voice low but fierce. You built walls to keep wolves out, Marcus. But you let one breed inside your house. Time to clean it out, all of it. He shut the case with a hard snap. Outside, thunder rolled down the street, echoing against brick. Loretta placed a firm hand on his arm. Pick the child over the empire. Or lose them both. Marcus met her gaze, something hardening behind his eyes. The room's tension shifted, less despair, more resolve. Loretta nodded once, satisfied, then moved to close the curtains. Storm's rising, she murmured. Make sure you're the one swinging when lightning hits. Rain slicked the alley behind Vale's clinic, neon bouncing off puddles like warning lights. Zion crouched near a row of trash bins, hood pulled low, breath fogging the damp air. The others waited blocks away, Marcus with Loretta, Amara guarding Eli. But this step belonged to him alone. He scanned the shadows. A janitor cart rolled past the far door, wheels squeaking. When the corridor fell silent, Zion slipped through the gap in the loading dock fence. The bins were marked with colored stickers, blue for paper, green for biohazard, a narrow red one for personal waste. He eased the red lid open. Inside, white paper bags lay stacked, some marked with Vivien's monogram. A faint chemical scent cut through the smell of rain and disinfectant. He pulled on latex gloves stolen from Samuels's kit, rummaging carefully until something clinked, a small amber bottle wrapped in gauze. Its label read, Vitamin Supplement, pediatric and tidy script, but the cap bore a single fingerprint smudge, clear against the plastic. Footsteps echoed inside the building, two men joking, voices moving closer. Zion slid behind the bin, heart thudding. The back door swung open, light spilled across wet pavement. A security guard leaned out, scanning the lot. Zion pressed against the wall, bottle tight in his palm. The guard lit a cigarette, took a slow drag, eyes sweeping the alley. Another voice called from inside, asking about a delivery. The guard flicked ash and turned away, letting the door slam. Zion exhaled, wiped condensation from the bottle, and slipped it into a padded pouch. He snapped a quick photo. Label, lot number, smudge. A second shot framed the bin, Vivien's discarded paper bag peeking from under gauze. He opened a messaging app, attached the pictures, hit send to Marcus's secure line. 3 dots blinked, then a reply. Copy received. Get clear. The door creaked again, this time Vale himself stepping out, phone at his ear. His coat collar flipped up against the rain. Shipment cleared. Vale murmured into the receiver. Yes, cross gets her cut. Zion froze in the shadows, listening. Vale paused, heel grinding against gravel. No, the boy won't talk. They don't have the spine, Zion's jaw clenched. He slipped farther into darkness, careful not to rattle the chain link. Vale finished the call, tossed his cigarette into a puddle, and disappeared inside. The lock clicked. Zion bolted for the fence, muscles coiled. He vaulted the rail, landing in a crouch, and sprinted through rain-slick streets toward the meeting point. Under a street lamp, Amara waited with an umbrella half open. Got it?" Her voice shook but stayed sharp. Zion lifted the pouch just enough for her to glimpse the bottle. "Fingerprints clear. Label screams cover story." They ducked into Marcus's car, doors shutting against the storm. Loretta turned from the front seat, eyes narrowing at the evidence. Marcus checked the photos on his phone, jaw tightening as he enlarged the print of Vivien's smudge. Loretta's voice carried steel. "That's her hand right there, feeding poison to a child." Amara gripped the pouch. "No more rumors. We've got her." Zion leaned back, rain dripping from his hood, pulse still pounding. "She thought nobody watched the trash." Marcus placed the pouch beside Samuels's envelope, all the proof gathering in one place. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline, loud enough to drown the city's hum. Inside the car, the air settled thick with resolve. The quiet before a fight none of them planned to lose. Camera lights flared across the community press hall, their glare bouncing off rainwater tracked in from the street. Rows of reporters, black outlets up front, mainstream crews behind, angled microphones toward the podium draped in navy cloth. Marcus stepped forward, leather case in hand, suit collar still damp from the storm outside. Beside him stood Selene Price, trial lawyer turned investigative journalist, her locks pinned high, eyes cutting through the room like a scalpel. She leaned to the mic first. "We're here because families on both sides of this city deserve to know who's been bleeding their children for profit." Her voice rang steady, rich with the cadence of pulpits and courtroom summations. Marcus opened the case, laying out pages. Samuels's lab report, Zion's photos of the trash bottle, invoices stamped with Hartwell logos, Vivien's signature sprawling across Guardian authorization. Flashbulbs strobed as reporters surged forward. "This isn't rumor." Marcus addressed the crowd, voice low but carrying. Dr. Adrian Vale designed braces to wound, then billed to treat the injuries. Vivien Cross fed those. Children's sedatives to keep them silent. My own company's funds were laundered through shell accounts to bankroll the scheme. A ripple moved through the room. Shock, then a murmur of anger, heavy with the weight of parents present. Selene held up the amber bottle sealed in an evidence pouch. "Fingerprint analysis confirms Cross handled this herself. Lab tests show the contents are tranquilizers, not vitamins A." Reporter from a black radio station stood, fist around her press badge. "What happens to the families who paid for these treatments?" Selene met her gaze. "We file restitution suits, freeze their assets, and hand every receipt to the district attorney. No child's pain gets buried under paperwork." Across the aisle, 2 marshals escorted Vivien through a side entrance. Her perfect hair sat stiff under fluorescent lights, eyes darting as cameras panned. Vale followed, face pale, hands tight behind his back. The room crackled with electricity. Marcus faced them directly. "You preyed on kids who trusted you. On communities that already fight to stay seen. That ends tonight." Vivien's smile flickered, a mask slipping. Vale shifted, sweat beading along his temple. Selene placed a hand atop the stack of files. "A judge has granted an emergency hearing. Both respondents are required to answer charges: fraud, medical abuse, conspiracy." Marshals produced warrants, the crowd surged, phones lifted high. From the back, Loretta's voice rang clear. "Justice isn't quiet. Not when our babies are involved." Applause cracked through the tension, echoing against cinderblock walls. Marcus passed the ledger to Selene. "Get this entered as Exhibit A." She nodded, already steering Vivien and Vale toward a waiting courtroom down the corridor, where a judge had convened a night session to lock evidence before it could disappear. Reporters pressed microphones toward Marcus as he left the podium. "Mr. Hartwell, will this destroy your company?" He paused at the doorway, glance sweeping across cameras, then to Eli, seated with the twins in the front row. "If it costs an empire to free a child, that's a bargain." Selene ushered the defendants into the chamber, doors swinging shut with a heavy thud. Inside, the first gavel strike split the air, ushering in a reckoning born from every ledger, every bruise, every voice too small until tonight. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, but the room no longer trembled under its weight. The truth had been dragged into light, and its glare left nowhere for predators to hide. Rain dripped from the courthouse awning as the night session broke. Vivien Cross slipped through a side corridor, heels striking marble, coat hood low to hide her face. Her phone glowed against her palm, a single message half-typed. "Meet me at the car. Now." Past the service door, 2 black SUVs idled. A driver stepped out, umbrella ready. Vivien tightened her grip on the bag stuffed with contracts, eyes fixed on escape. A shout rose from the far end of the hall. Uniformed deputies closed ranks, boots quick against stone. One raised a hand. "Cross, stop right there." Vivien's stride faltered. She pivoted, scanning for another exit. Cameras from community journalists, local black papers, live stream crews swarmed behind the officers, their lenses catching the scene in bursts of light. Vale appeared farther back, already cuffed, flanked by marshals. His gaze slid toward Vivien, heavy with blame. She lunged toward the SUVs. A deputy stepped into her path, badge gleaming under fluorescent light. "Warrants active. Hands where we can see them." Vivien tried a smile, voice silk over steel. "There's been a misunderstanding." Another officer held up the evidence pouch containing the amber bottle, fingerprint visible beneath plastic. "Not tonight." The crowd outside sensed movement, pressing closer to the barricades. A cheer rolled across the steps as word spread. The woman behind the brace scandal was cornered. Loretta Brooks stood among them, umbrella forgotten, clapping once, hard. "That's for every child you tried to buy." Phones lifted high. Live feeds lit the rain as deputies guided Vivien back through the doorway. She stiffened, eyes flashing toward the lenses, but the image was already racing across timelines. A woman who walked into black neighborhoods with baskets now escorted out of court in chains. Inside, Marcus watched from the lobby rail, Eli leaning against his side, twins at his shoulder. Applause drifted up from the plaza, blending with the steady hiss of rain. Vivien's hands lowered, wrists encircled by steel. Marshals read her rights over the rising noise. Vale hung his head as officers led him past reporters shouting questions. Selene stepped forward, voice clear enough for every mic. "The court has taken custody of evidence and defendants. Tonight belongs to the families who refuse to stay quiet outside." Horns sounded from cars along the avenue, drivers leaning out to celebrate. Children in raincoats waved signs scribbled in marker. "Protect our kids." Vivien's last glance swept the room, the boy she tried to break, the people she underestimated, the empire slipping from her grasp. Deputies ushered her through the doorway toward a waiting transport van, its lights washing her pale in red and blue. Marcus tightened his arm around Eli. The child's brace caught a glint from the flashing lights, no longer a shackle, but proof of a fight almost won. In the plaza, the crowd's cheer rose above the storm, a roar carrying the promise that no one would profit from their children's pain again. Morning sun poured over a freshly painted courtyard, gold streaking across brick once dulled by neglect. Children chased a ball between benches, still wet from new varnish. A banner stretched across the railings. Hartwell Justice Fund. Launch and block celebration. Marcus stood near the steps, sleeves rolled, a folder tucked beneath his arm. Behind him, a mural of Loretta Brooks cradling a child gleamed on the wall, painted overnight by neighborhood artists. Loretta herself sat at a picnic table, eyes bright, apron folded neatly beside her plate of cornbread. He stepped forward, voice cutting through the chatter. "What happened to Eli should never touch another child. Today, this block belongs to the people who fought for it." Applause rolled through the courtyard. Cameras from local black outlets streamed the moment, phones raised from balconies. Marcus opened the folder, drawing out a deed stamped with the Hartwell seal. "The first act of the Hartwell Justice Fund is buying back these homes. No landlord, no shell company will push this community out again." He handed the document to Loretta. Her hands trembled as she lifted it high, sunlight flashing on the notary's stamp. Zion and Amara bounded up the steps, Eli limping behind, brace gleaming, properly fitted now, no longer a shackle. Zion's phone caught the cheers as neighbors reached for Eli, patting his shoulders, lifting him onto the stage. Selene Price stood at the edge, microphone in hand. The fund will cover legal aid, medical audits, and training for young investigators, she announced. We've turned receipts into reform. Marcus crouched beside Eli, voice firm enough for the whole yard. This isn't about my company's name. It's about kids who deserve care, not chains. Loretta leaned on the podium, eyes sweeping faces that had gathered. Pastors, barbers, teachers, families in Sunday best, though it was Saturday morning. We hold each other up. That's what they can't buy. Amara grabbed a spray paint can left from the mural crew, scrawled a quick line on the new basketball pole. No child's pain for profit. The crowd cheered louder. A brass band from the nearby church struck up a tune, horns bright against the lingering scent of fresh paint. Kids joined in, clapping, spinning beneath the banner. Marcus glanced at the Justice Fund's ledger, then at Eli and the twins laughing near the rim. He closed the folder, a quiet promise settling across his shoulders. Loretta's voice rose over the music, clear as a bell. We turned a scheme into a stand. Let's keep building. The courtyard pulsed with applause, sunlight catching every fresh brushstroke on the walls, signs of a neighborhood that had survived a storm and claimed its right to heal in the open air. Late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the park, light sliding over swings and picnic tables still warm from a block cookout. A cracked basketball bounced in quick rhythm, Eli dribbling hard across blacktop, Amara guarding the lane, Zion circling for a steal. Their laughter cut through the hum of cicadas, a sound bright enough to outshine months of storm. On a bench nearby, Marcus sat with Loretta Brooks, a paper cup of lemonade in his hand. Her apron was gone, replaced by a deep blue shawl, eyes sharp, lips curved in a quiet smile. Around them, neighbors spread quilts on grass, some tuning guitars, others talking about next week's Justice Fund meeting. Eli pivoted, planted his foot, shot high toward the rim nailed to an old oak. The ball clanged, rolled out toward the curb. He lunged, stumbled, brace scraping asphalt, and pitched forward onto one knee. The game froze for a breath. Marcus tensed, half rising. Loretta's hand rested on his sleeve, steady. Let him find it. Eli pushed himself upright, brushing dust from the brace. He planted both feet, shoulders squaring against the quiet. A grin spread slow across his face. He retrieved the ball, spun once, and launched another shot. It dropped clean through the net. Cheers rippled from benches and blankets. Zion clapped him on the back. That's how you close. Amara bumped his shoulder, smirking. No sedatives, no screws, just skills. Marcus exhaled, the tension in his chest easing into pride. Loretta's gaze lingered on the boy, then swept the park, the mural of community leaders beyond the fence, the food stand raising funds for future cases, children climbing newly painted jungle bars. A breeze lifted the corner of the Hartwell Justice banner strung near the picnic tables, its gold letters gleaming against blue cloth. Eli jogged back to center court, dribbling with confidence, brace catching sunlight like a badge of survival. He pivoted, passed to Amara, who feinted left, laughing. Zion darted between them, stealing the ball, all three spilling into easy competition. Marcus leaned back on the bench, eyes tracking the game. Looks like freedom fits him. Loretta nodded once, voice quiet but firm. That's what happens when truth wins. The sun lowered toward rooftops, spilling amber across the blacktop. Neighbors called goodbyes as they packed up instruments and leftover cornbread. A church bell rang from a block away, folding its chime into the evening air. On the court, Eli caught the ball, planted solid, and took a final shot. The net whispered as the ball dropped through, light catching the curve of his smile. He stood taller than the shadow behind him, a boy unbound, claiming space no scheme could steal again. Applause drifted across the park as the ball rolled to a stop, resting against Eli's sneaker. He scooped it up, tucking it under his arm while the twins clapped him on the back. Beyond the court, families gathered their things, voices warm with plans for next weekend's block cookout and the next steps for the Justice Fund. Marcus rose from the bench, offered an arm to Loretta as they crossed toward the children. Sunlight haloed the group, catching the faint chalk lines kids had drawn along the edge of the court. Names, hearts, a bold scrawl reading, "Protect our kids." Loretta reached out, tracing the letters with a finger. "Let them play. Let them build. That's the future we fought for." Marcus nodded, eyes lingering on Eli's smile. "Storm's behind us." Now we keep the sky clear. The camera of a neighbor's phone panned over the courtyard, mural, banner, children running free, before settling on the group framed in evening gold. For everyone watching, the message landed without needing to be shouted. Communities grow stronger when no one is left to fight alone. If this story moved you, share it so another voice can rise. Drop a comment with a name or place that deserves protection, and let someone know they're not standing in the storm by themselves. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next story where truth breaks through and sets someone free.